I remember that night when Clay threw our engagement ring down the bathroom sink. Yes, the bathroom sink. I was brushing my teeth when suddenly his reflection appeared in the mirror, his face red with rage, and he grabbed my hand and yanked the ring off my finger. "This is fake, everything is fake," he screamed and dropped it down the drain. I could only watch as the metal band disappeared with the running water. In that moment, I didn't even feel like crying, just a strange sense of relief, like a mask I'd been seeing for months had finally fallen away. Clay had always been short-tempered, but this was beyond anything before. For the past 7 months, his behavior had been turning toxic, checking my phone without asking, questioning every time I met friends, twisting my words to suit whatever narrative he wanted to believe. I told myself maybe his business partner betraying him was why he was stressed, or maybe the pressure from his brother's upcoming wedding was getting to him. But tonight, standing in that bathroom, I finally understood. This wasn't stress. This was his real personality finally showing itself without the pretense. "Clay, what did you just do?" I asked, my toothbrush still in my hand, toothpaste foam at the corners of my mouth. He stepped closer, invading my space the way he always did when he wanted to intimidate me. "What I should have done on day one. This relationship is a mistake, Soren. You were never on my level anyway." His words hit like arrows straight to my chest, each syllable designed to wound. I rinsed my mouth with shaking hands, dried my face with the towel, and walked into the bedroom without another word. From the closet I pulled out my gym bag, the one I usually used for weekend trips to visit my parents. I started throwing in essentials: underwear, socks, a few shirts, jeans. My hands moved on autopilot while my brain tried to catch up with what was happening. Clay followed me, and I could see his demeanor shifting already. The rage was melting into something that almost looked like shame, though I'd learned not to trust these quick transformations. "I wasn't being serious. You can't just leave. We signed the apartment lease together. Both our names are on it." He said it like that legal document was chains that bound me to him forever. I didn't look at him. I just kept packing, grabbing my phone charger, my wallet, my passport, and important documents from the desk drawer. That's when I remembered my cousin Blake mentioning his friend managed properties in a high-rise building downtown. Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone and called Blake. "I need a studio apartment. Tonight. It's urgent." Clay's face went pale when he heard me making that call. He tried to grab my hand, probably to take the phone away, but I jerked free and kept moving toward the door with my gym bag slung over my shoulder. "Soren, come on. Don't be dramatic. Where are you even going to go at this hour?" His voice had that condescending tone I'd grown to hate, the one that suggested I was being irrational, that I was the problem. "Anywhere but here," I said, and those were the last words I spoke to him that night. I walked out of our apartment, well, his apartment now, and didn't look back. The hallway had never felt so long, each step echoing in the silence. By the time I reached my car in the parking garage, my whole body was shaking. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally doing something I should have done months ago. I drove to a 24-hour diner and sat in a booth with terrible coffee, waiting for Blake to call me back. The fluorescent lights were harsh and the vinyl seat was cracked, but it felt safer than the apartment I'd just left. My phone buzzed constantly, Clay calling, texting, leaving voicemails that I deleted without listening to. Each notification was like a small bomb going off, but I kept my phone on because I needed Blake to reach me. Around 2 in the morning, Blake finally called. "Hey, sorry for the delay. I just talked to my friend Marcus, who manages the Riverside Towers. He's got a studio available on the 21st floor. It's above your usual budget, but he said the owner is desperate for a tenant and willing to negotiate. Can you meet him there at 9 tomorrow morning?" "I'll be there," I said, relief flooding through me. "Thank you, Blake. Seriously, you doing okay? You sounded pretty shaken on that first call." Blake's concern was genuine, which made my throat tighten with emotion. "I will be," I managed to say. "I just need to get through tonight." After hanging up, I sat there for another hour, nursing cold coffee and trying to process everything. The elderly waitress refilled my cup without asking, giving me a knowing look that suggested she'd seen her share of people hiding out in diners in the middle of the night. I wondered how obvious my situation was, if my face showed the map of everything I'd been through. Eventually, I checked into a budget motel near the highway. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and the bedspread had questionable stains, but I'd never been more grateful for a locked door. I barely slept, lying on top of the covers fully clothed, listening to trucks pass on the highway and jumping at every sound. My mind kept replaying the bathroom scene, the ring disappearing down the drain, Clay's face twisted with anger, my own reflection looking like a stranger. Around 6 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and took a shower in the tiny motel bathroom. The water pressure was weak and the temperature inconsistent, but washing away the previous night felt symbolic somehow. I put on clean clothes from my gym bag and realized I'd need to go back to the apartment eventually to get the rest of my things. The thought made my stomach twist with anxiety, but I pushed it aside, one problem at a time. By 8:30 I was parked outside Riverside Towers, a sleek glass building that looked nothing like the modest complex where Clay and I had lived. The morning sun reflected off the windows, making the whole structure gleam like something from a different, better world. I sat in my car for a few minutes, gathering courage, thinking about how 24 hours ago I'd been brushing my teeth in a bathroom I thought was mine, engaged to someone I thought I knew. When I finally walked into that lobby with its marble floors and modern art on the walls, I felt like I was stepping into a new life. Marcus was waiting by the elevators, a friendly guy in his 30s with an easy smile. "You must be Soren. Blake told me you needed a place urgently. Come on up. Let me show you what we've got." As the elevator climbed toward the 21st floor, I watched the city spread out below through the glass walls. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. Blake had worked miracles. By 9 in the morning, I was standing in what could be my new home. The studio apartment was everything our shared place wasn't. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light, showing off a view of the entire city skyline. The kitchen had stainless steel appliances that actually looked clean and modern, not the aging beige set Clay and I had inherited from the previous tenant. The living area was open and spacious, with hardwood floors that gleamed in the morning sun. "Bathrooms through there," Marcus said, gesturing to a door on the left. "It's small but functional. Building has a gym on the 3rd floor, laundry in the basement, and there's a rooftop garden that's pretty nice in the evenings." He was giving me the standard tour, but I could tell from his tone that Blake had filled him in on at least some of my situation. There was a gentleness in how he explained things, like he understood I needed this to work out. "I'll take it," I said before he'd even finished showing me the closet space. The words came out firm and certain, surprising even me. Marcus raised his eyebrows slightly but smiled. "Don't you want to know about the rent first? Or see the lease terms?" Blake said it was negotiable. "Whatever the owner wants, I can make it work. I need to move in as soon as possible." I pulled out my phone to check my bank account, mentally calculating how much I had in savings. It would be tight, especially if I had to put down first and last month's rent, plus security deposit. But I'd figure it out. Anything was better than going back. Marcus seemed to understand the urgency. "Tell you what, let me call the owner right now. If you're serious about taking it, we can probably expedite the paperwork." He stepped out into the hallway to make the call, leaving me alone in the empty apartment. I walked to the windows and pressed my palm against the cool glass, looking down at the morning traffic 21 floors below. People going about their normal lives, completely unaware that mine had just imploded. My phone buzzed. Clay again. This time it was a text. "Where are you? We need to talk about this rationally. You can't just disappear." I stared at the message, anger rising in my chest. Rationally. He'd thrown our engagement ring down a drain in a fit of rage, and now he wanted to talk rationally. I blocked his number without responding, then immediately felt a surge of anxiety. What if he showed up at my work? What if he contacted my parents? Marcus came back in, looking pleased. "Good news. Owner says if you can do the paperwork today and have the deposit ready, you can have the keys by this afternoon. He's actually relieved. Place has been empty for 2 months, and he was starting to worry." We spent the next hour going over lease details, and I signed everywhere Marcus indicated, barely reading the fine print. Probably not the smartest decision I'd ever made, but I was running on adrenaline and fear, not logic. By noon I had keys to my new place. The apartment was mine for the next year, at least. Marcus shook my hand at the door and said, "Welcome to Riverside Towers. If you need anything, building management office is on the first floor. When he left, I stood in the middle of my empty studio and felt the weight of everything hit me at once. I had a new place, but all my belongings were still at Clay's apartment. I'd need to go back there, face him, pack up 2 years of my life. The thought made me nauseous, so I called the one person I knew would help without judgment. Quinn? Are you free this afternoon? I need help moving some stuff. My best friend had been warning me about Clay for months, noticing things I'd deliberately ignored. I could practically hear her relief through the phone when I explained I'd left him and already had a new place. I'm coming right now. Don't you dare go back there alone, Soren. I mean it. Quinn's protective instinct kicked in immediately, which made me feel both grateful and ashamed. Ashamed that it had gotten bad enough that my friends were worried about my safety. Grateful that I had people who cared. Quinn arrived at the old apartment at the same time I did, pulling up in her beat-up Honda just as I was psyching myself up to go inside. "Ready?" she asked, giving my shoulder a squeeze. I nodded, though I definitely wasn't ready. Using my key felt weird, like I was breaking into someone else's place even though legally I still lived there. Clay was in the living room and the confrontation started immediately. "There you are. I've been calling you all night and morning. This is ridiculous, Soren. One fight and you just run away?" He stood up from the couch and I noticed he was still wearing yesterday's clothes. Had he not slept either? Part of me wanted to feel sympathy, but then I remembered the ring, his words, all the months of walking on eggshells. "Clay, you flushed our engagement ring. Which part of that seems like normal relationship behavior to you?" I kept my voice steady as I headed toward the bedroom, Quinn following close behind like a bodyguard. Clay moved to block my path, and I saw Quinn tense beside me, ready to intervene if needed. "So what do you want me to do? Call a plumber? Fish it out of the pipes? Would that fix everything?" His sarcasm was like nails on a chalkboard. I sidestepped him and continued to the bedroom, starting to pull clothes out of the closet. Quinn found boxes in the hall closet and began efficiently packing my books and personal items. The atmosphere shifted when Quinn came back into the living room with a box. Clay immediately changed his demeanor, like an actor switching roles. Suddenly he was reasonable, apologetic, the charming person he could be when he wanted something. "Quinn, you know me. Tell Soren he's overreacting. I made a mistake. Everyone fights. Relationships take work." His performance would have been convincing if I hadn't seen it so many times before. Quinn set down the box with a thud and looked him straight in the eye. "Clay, if you can't handle stress without destroying your partner's property and saying cruel things, then you shouldn't be in a relationship. It's actually that simple." Her bluntness cut through his act like a knife, and I saw anger flash across his face before he controlled it. We packed for the next 2 hours in tense silence, Clay alternating between sulking in the living room and making passive-aggressive comments. Finally, with Quinn's car and mine both loaded with boxes, we were ready to leave. I took one last look around the apartment that had been home, seeing it now for what it really was, a place where I'd slowly been losing myself. In Quinn's car on the way to my new place, she said what I'd been thinking. "I'm sorry, but I'm so relieved you finally left. The last 6 months, you weren't yourself. Always anxious, always checking your phone for his messages, always apologizing for things that weren't your faults. That's not normal, babe." Her words hurt because they were true. I hadn't realized how visible my misery had been to everyone else. We carried boxes up to my new apartment, and when the last one was inside, Quinn and I sat on the floor eating Chinese takeout. "This is your fresh starch," she said, expertly wielding chopsticks. "Don't waste it, and if Clay tries to contact you, tell me immediately." After she left, I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. My new home was empty except for boxes, but it was mine, just mine. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, that felt like enough. The first few days in my new apartment felt like being on vacation. I slept in without someone complaining about wasted mornings. I made breakfast whenever I felt like it without worrying about disrupting someone else's routine. I worked on my freelance graphic design projects at the small desk I'd set up by the window, with natural light instead of the dim corner I'd been relegated to before. Clay didn't message or call for the first 3 days, and I allowed myself to hope that maybe he'd accepted it was over. That hope died on day 4. The messages started simple and professional. We need to discuss the lease and how to handle the bills. Then throughout the day they evolved. Your mail is piling up here. When are you picking it up? By evening the tone had shifted again. Soren, this is childish. Come back so we can have an adult conversation about our relationship. I didn't respond to any of them, which only seemed to fuel more messages over the next few days. I miss you. I didn't mean those things I said. Please just call me so I know you're safe. The pattern was familiar. Clay cycling through different approaches to see which one would get a response. I'd watched him do this with other people, but experiencing it directed at me was different. Each notification made my anxiety spike. So eventually I muted our conversation thread. The messages still came, I just didn't see them immediately anymore. A week after leaving, Quinn invited me to brunch at her favorite rooftop cafe. We sat under an umbrella with mimosas and overpriced pancakes, and she asked casually, "So have you heard from Clay at all?" I showed her my phone with the muted conversation, scrolling through days of increasingly desperate messages. She shook her head in disgust. Classic manipulation tactics. He's trying every angle to get you to engage. I know, I said, stabbing at my pancakes. Part of me feels guilty for not responding. Like maybe I owe him a conversation. You owe him nothing, Quinn said firmly. You left. That's all the conversation he needs. She took a sip of her mimosa and added, "Actually, I saw him yesterday at the grocery store. He tried the whole wounded victim routine with me too. Told me you were overreacting, that all couples fight like this. I told him normal couples don't flush engagement rings and say vicious things designed to hurt their partners." Her loyalty made me feel both better and worse. Better because I had support. Worse because I realized how much I'd been normalizing Clay's behavior. "Thanks for having my back," I said quietly. Quinn reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Always. That's what friends do." That evening I was returning to my building after picking up groceries, when I saw him. Clay was standing in the lobby, and the shock of seeing him there made my heart pound so hard I felt dizzy. How did he know where I lived? I'd been so careful not to mention the building name or address. Sorry. Finally, he started walking quickly toward me and I instinctively took a step back. The security guard on duty noticed the interaction and moved closer to us. His body language alert. "Clay, what are you doing here? How did you find this place?" My voice came out sharper than intended, fear making me sound angry. I clutched my grocery bags like they could somehow shield me from this confrontation. "Blake mentioned it, just slipped out when I ran into him after the grocery store. He didn't mean to." Clay's explanation made my stomach drop. I'd specifically asked Blake to keep my location private. "Please, Soren, just give me 5 minutes. We can talk right here in the lobby if that makes you more comfortable. I just need you to understand I'm going to change. I promise." The security guard was now standing next to me. "Sir, do you know this gentleman? Is there a problem here?" His professional tone was reassuring. A reminder that I wasn't alone even though Clay had invaded my new safe space. I nodded to acknowledge I knew Clay but kept my distance. "Yes, I know him, but I'm asking him to leave. Can you please escort him out?" Clay's expression cycled through several emotions: shock, hurt, and then anger. The security guard gently but firmly took Clay's arm. "Sir, you need to leave the building now." Clay pulled away from the guard's grip but didn't resist being guided toward the exit. "You can't do this to me, Soren. I won't let you just walk away. We spent 3 years together." His voice echoed through the lobby, drawing attention from other residents. I watched as the security guard professionally removed Clay from the building, feeling my hands shake so badly I nearly dropped my groceries. Once Clay was outside and the doors closed between us, I rushed to the elevator and jabbed the button repeatedly. My breathing was shallow, panic setting in now that the immediate threat was gone. In the elevator I leaned against the wall and tried to calm down, but my whole body was trembling. Inside my apartment, I set the groceries down with shaking hands and immediately texted Quinn. Clay showed up at my building. Blake accidentally told him where I live. "I'm scared." Her response came within seconds. "What? I'm calling Blake right now to chew him out. And you need to talk to building management first thing tomorrow about banning Clay from the property. This is stalking, Soren. This is serious." I knew she was right, but part of me still felt like I was overreacting. being dramatic like Clay always said I was. But another part, the part that had felt genuine fear when I saw him in my lobby, knew this wasn't normal. This wasn't how people behaved after a breakup. I spent the evening looking up information about restraining orders, feeling ridiculous but also terrified. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made me jump, convinced it was Clay somehow getting past security. I kept checking my phone for messages, finding new ones every time I looked. "I'm sorry for showing up like that. You're being unreasonable. We need to talk face to face. I love you." The messages contradicted each other, swinging between apologetic and demanding, loving and accusatory. By morning, I was exhausted but determined. I went down to the building management office as soon as it opened. The property manager, a middle-aged woman named Diane, listened to my situation with growing concern. "We take resident safety very seriously," she said, typing notes into her computer. "I'll add his name and description to our security alert list. If he shows up again, our guards will remove him immediately and will call the police if necessary." Hearing her take it seriously made me feel validated and terrified all at once. This was really happening. My relationship hadn't just ended badly, it was turning into something that required security alerts and potential police involvement. As I rode the elevator back to my apartment, I wondered how I'd gotten here, how I'd missed all the warning signs that should have been obvious. But deep down, I knew I hadn't missed them. I'd just chosen to ignore them, hoping things would get better, hoping Clay would change. Now I was finally accepting the truth. He was never going to change, at least not for me. And I deserved so much better than hoping someone would stop hurting me. 2 more weeks passed, and I'd settled into a routine that finally felt sustainable. Building management had been surprisingly cooperative when I explained my situation, adding Clay's name to their restricted visitors list, without requiring extensive documentation. I'd expected bureaucracy and resistance, but the property manager seemed to understand the urgency. Still, Clay wasn't giving up. He just changed tactics. Now he waited outside my office building. The first time I saw him during my lunch break, he was holding 2 coffee cups with that desperately hopeful expression I'd once found endearing. "Soren, please. I got your favorite vanilla latte with extra foam. Exactly how you like it." His voice carried across the sidewalk, drawing curious looks from other office workers heading out for lunch. I kept walking, pretending I hadn't seen him, but he jogged to catch up. "How much longer are you going to punish me? I've told you I'll do therapy, counseling, whatever you need. Just tell me what it takes." The fact that he saw my absence as punishment rather than self-preservation told me everything I needed to know. I stopped abruptly and turned to face him, aware that pedestrians were noticing our confrontation. "Clay, you didn't just throw a ring. You spent months tearing me down, controlling who I saw and when, twisting my words until I couldn't trust my own perception of reality. And now you think an apology and a coffee makes that okay? Life doesn't work that way." My voice was steady despite the anger coursing through me. His face cycled through emotions, shame, anger, frustration, all blending together. "What did you expect? A perfect relationship with no conflicts? Real couples argue, Soren. They work through problems instead of running away." The gaslighting was so familiar it almost made me laugh. I took a deep breath, conscious of the public setting. Arguments happen, yes. Abuse doesn't. Disrespect doesn't. And I need to get back to work now before my lunch hour ends. I walked determinedly back into my office building, nodding at the security guard who'd witnessed the exchange and looked concerned. The guard gave me a subtle thumbs up, which somehow made me feel both protected and embarrassed that my personal drama was so visible. That evening, Quinn and Blake met me at a coffee shop to discuss what to do next. Blake looked guilty, still beating himself up about accidentally revealing my address. "Look, I think you need to meet Clay one final time and make it crystal clear that it's over. Give him proper closure so he stops with these ambush tactics. Otherwise, this could escalate and your safety might be at risk." I didn't want to, but I knew they were right. Leaving things ambiguous was only prolonging the situation. I sent Clay a text. "Riverside Plaza, Sunday 3 p.m. Final conversation. Come alone and don't be late." His response was immediate. "I'll be there. Thank you for this opportunity." Sunday arrived with clear skies and unseasonable warmth. I got to the plaza at 2:45, choosing a bench in full view of multiple pathways. Nowhere he could corner me without witnesses nearby. Families were having picnics. Couples strolled hand in hand. Joggers passed in colorful athletic gear. Normal people living normal lives while I prepared for what I hoped would be the last confrontation with someone I'd once planned to marry. Clay arrived exactly at 3 and the transformation shocked me. He was impeccably dressed in crisp jeans and a button-down shirt, freshly shaven with styled hair, looking like he was heading to a job interview rather than a breakup conversation. He smiled as if the past weeks hadn't happened, as if we were just meeting for a casual catch-up. "Soren, I really appreciate you agreeing to meet. I know this hasn't been easy for you." He sat down, leaving what he probably thought was respectful space between us. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Clay, I ask you here to say this clearly and finally. We are done. Permanently. I don't want reconciliation. I don't want friendship. I just want to move forward with my life in peace." The words felt powerful coming out, each syllable a small reclamation of my autonomy. His smile faded and his jaw tightened. "Do you honestly believe you'll be happier without me? Remember when I supported you through losing your job and nobody would hire you? When your father was in the hospital and you needed money for medical bills?" There it was. The manipulation playbook, reminding me of past debts to create guilt. Supporting your partner through difficult times is what people in relationships do, Clay. It's normal. It doesn't give you permission to mistreat me indefinitely, or hold those actions over my head as leverage. I remained calm, refusing to let him control the emotional tenor of this conversation. He stood up, frustration breaking through his composed facade. "Fine, but remember this, Soren. You're incredibly dull, predictable and boring. Nobody else is going to put up with your quirks the way I did. You'll end up alone and miserable." His final attempt to wound me, to plant seeds of insecurity that would make me doubt my decision. But his words didn't land the way he intended. I stood up too, meeting his eyes directly. I would rather be alone and boring than together and terrified. I would rather be predictable and safe than exciting and constantly on edge. "Goodbye, Clay. Do not contact me again." I walked away without looking back. Even when I heard him call my name, my steps were steady, purposeful. Quinn had been right, this closure was necessary. I'd said what needed saying, drawn the boundary in permanent marker instead of pencil. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in months. The conversation was done, the relationship officially terminated by mutual acknowledgement, even if only one of us was happy about it. Back in my apartment, I stood at the window watching the city lights flicker on as evening approached. My phone buzzed with a message from Quinn. "How did it go?" I replied simply, "It's over. Really over this time." Her response was a string of celebration emojis that made me smile despite the emotional exhaustion settling into my bones. I'd done it. I'd stood up for myself, set firm boundaries and walked away from toxicity. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt genuinely proud of myself. Life gradually normalized over the following weeks. I decorated my studio apartment exactly how I wanted, graphic design prints from my college portfolio on the walls, a corner filled with succulents and small potted plants that Clay would have called pointless clutter, minimalist furniture that he'd dismissed as too plain. Every choice was mine alone, and that freedom felt revolutionary. Quinn suggested I find a creative outlet, something that was entirely my own, so I bought a used camera and started exploring street photography on weekends. Walking through different neighborhoods with my camera felt meditative. Each photograph I took felt like reclaiming creativity that had withered under constant criticism. I'd forgotten how much I loved capturing moments, the play of light on old brick buildings, strangers lost in thought at coffee shops, the geometric patterns of fire escapes against cloudy skies. A month passed peacefully. Clay's messages and calls had stopped completely after our plaza meeting. I allowed myself to believe he'd finally accepted reality and moved on. Then one Friday evening, while I was organizing my photography prints, considering which ones might be worth printing and framing, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery driver with a clipboard. "Package for Soren Reed. Need your signature." I opened the door and signed, accepting a surprisingly lightweight box. After the driver left, I examined the package. No return address, just my name and apartment number in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was an elegant velvet jewelry box. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. A note in Clay's distinctive handwriting read, "I had this custom made. Second chances deserve second rings. We deserve another try." See, the box contained a new engagement ring. Similar in design to the original but clearly expensive, the stones catching the light with almost aggressive brilliance. I felt multiple things simultaneously. A twisted sort of flattery that he'd gone to such lengths, horror that he was still pursuing this despite clear boundaries, and anger that he'd completely disregarded my explicit request for no contact. I immediately called Quinn, hearing the panic in my own voice. He sent me a ring. A custom-made engagement ring with a note about second chances. This is creepy, right? Or am I overreacting? Quinn's response was swift and alarmed. "Soren, this is stalking behavior. You told him explicitly not to contact you. You need to report this to the police. At least get it on record." But I hesitated. Would filing a report seem extreme? Would it cause unnecessary problems? I tucked the box back into its packaging and shoved it onto the top shelf of my closet, as if hiding it would somehow make the violation less real. The next morning, Saturday, my doorbell rang again at 8. No delivery driver this time. Through the peephole I saw Clay looking disheveled and exhausted, like he hadn't slept. "Soren, please open the door. I know you're home. Just hear me out. I've started therapy. Look, here's my therapist's business card." He slid a card under the door, which landed on my floor with a soft whisper of sound. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged, creating only a narrow gap. "Clay, you keep showing up uninvited. You sent me a package I never asked for and explicitly don't want. This is repeatedly crossing boundaries. I'm glad you're in therapy, genuinely, that's good for you, but do it for yourself, not for me. There's nothing left between us. I made that clear at our last meeting." Tears welled in his eyes, and his emotional display looked genuine. "Please, Soren, just one coffee? Somewhere public where you'll feel safe? The Firefly Cafe, your favorite place? Just one conversation to show you I'm really changing." Part of me felt cruel for maintaining distance. Maybe people really could change with professional help. Maybe I should at least listen. One coffee. Only one. Firefly Cafe, Wednesday at 5. If you create any kind of scene or drama there, I'm blocking you everywhere and considering legal action. Are we clear? He nodded frantically, gratitude and relief flooding his features. "Yes, absolutely clear. Thank you so much, Soren. You won't regret this." When Quinn found out about the coffee meeting, she was furious. "This is a mistake. He's manipulating you again. Showing you a therapist's card proves nothing except that he knows how to make appointments." But I'd already decided I would meet him this one last time, hear whatever he wanted to say, and then make my final decision with complete information. Maybe closure needed to come from both sides. Wednesday arrived faster than I wanted. I got to Firefly Cafe 15 minutes early and chose a table near the window with clear sightlines to the door. The familiar smell of espresso and baked goods was comforting, grounding me in a space where I'd spent countless peaceful hours before Clay and I had even met. He arrived punctually, looking nervous but put together. We ordered vanilla latte for me, black coffee for him, and sat across from each other with the small table between us feeling like an ocean. "I won't take much of your time," he started. "I just needed you to know that therapy is helping me understand why I acted the way I did. My therapist says I have attachment issues stemming from childhood, that I sabotage relationships because I'm terrified of abandonment." I listened without interrupting, watching for signs of manipulation versus genuine insight. He talked for 20 minutes about his sessions, the revelations he'd had, the coping mechanisms he was learning. Some of it sounded rehearsed, but some of it seemed painfully honest. When he finished, I took a sip of my latte and chose my words carefully. "I'm genuinely glad you're getting help, Clay. Understanding yourself is important. But understanding why you hurt someone doesn't erase the hurt, and it doesn't obligate them to give you another chance." He nodded slowly, seeming to actually hear me. "I know I'm not asking for another chance right now. I just wanted you to see that I'm trying." We finished our coffees in relative peace, and when we parted ways outside the cafe, he didn't push for more. "Thank you for listening," was all he said before walking to his car. I drove home feeling uncertain but not regretful. At least now I knew he was seeking help, even if our relationship was still definitively over. 3 months later, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. After that coffee meeting, Clay had actually respected my space. Occasionally a simple message would arrive. Hope your photography is going well, or saw your design work featured on that blog. Congratulations. No pressure, no guilt tripping, no emotional manipulation. Just brief, respectful acknowledgments that he was still alive and thinking of me without demanding anything in return. My photography had evolved from a casual hobby into something more serious. A local gallery owner had seen my work on social media and offered me a small exhibition, just 5 prints. But my first professional showcase. Quinn helped design promotional posters and Blake hosted a small celebration at his office when the invitations were printed. I felt simultaneously excited and terrified about displaying my work publicly. The exhibition opening was everything I'd hoped for. The gallery was intimate and warmly lit, with string lights creating a cozy atmosphere. My college friends came. Quinn brought her boyfriend. Blake arrived with his partner. I stood near my favorite piece, a moody black and white photograph of an abandoned subway platform, discussing composition with a visitor when I noticed a familiar figure in my peripheral vision. Clay stood in the corner wearing a new suit, maintaining respectful distance while quietly observing my work. When our eyes accidentally met, he offered a small, sad smile and a respectful nod but made no move to approach. He was simply there, supporting from afar. By the time I finished thanking guests as the evening wound down, he'd already left without seeking personal interaction. I found him in the parking lot afterward, leaning casually against his car with his hands in his pockets, maintaining proper distance. Your work is genuinely beautiful, Soren. Really impressive. I just wanted to congratulate you properly. I'll leave now if you want. He started to turn toward his car door. Clay, wait. The words came out before I'd consciously decided to speak. We stood there in the parking lot, city lights and the gallery's warm glow creating strange shadows between us. Thank you for coming tonight. And genuinely, thank you for respecting my boundaries these past months. That couldn't have been easy. He met my eyes, and I could see sincerity there. Therapy has been teaching me a lot about boundaries and consent, where my control issues come from, what healthy communication actually looks like. I'm starting to understand how badly I hurt you. I'm truly sorry for that. You deserved so much better than how I treated you. For the first time, his words didn't sound rehearsed or manipulative. They sounded genuine, earned through actual work on himself. I appreciate that you're doing real work in therapy, I said carefully, but I'm not ready for any kind of relationship. Maybe I never will be, specifically with you, and that needs to be acceptable to you. He nodded, visibly emotional but composed. I completely understand and accept that. If someday you feel differently, even just as acquaintances or friends, I'll be here. And if you decide you want permanent no contact, I'll accept that too without drama. Your happiness and peace matter more than my wants. That's something therapy has taught me. He got in his car and drove away with a final respectful wave. Standing there alone, I realized I felt no guilt, no regret, just peaceful acceptance that people might genuinely change with proper help, but that doesn't obligate you to re-involve them in your life. Sometimes growth means choosing separate paths and celebrating individual happiness from a distance. I looked up at the night sky where the brightest stars managed to shine through the city's light pollution. For the first time, I truly believed I could shine that brightly too on my own strength, by my own light, without needing anyone else's validation or reflection. That feeling of complete independence and genuine self-love felt like the real victory. Driving home, I smiled genuinely, content with my decisions and excited about my future. The photography exhibition had sold 2 prints, and the gallery owner had mentioned interest in a larger show next season. My freelance design work was steady and fulfilling. Quinn and Blake were planning a camping trip and wanted me to join. My apartment felt like home in a way nowhere had felt in years. Clay's journey was his own now, separate from mine. Maybe he would genuinely change and find happiness. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my responsibility to monitor or manage. I'd done the hardest thing. I'd set boundaries, I'd rebuilt my life from the ground up. Everything else was just details. The studio apartment welcomed me back with its familiar smell and comfortable silence. I made tea, sat by the window and looked out at the city sprawled below. Somewhere out there, Clay was living his life. And here I was, living mine, both of us moving forward, hopefully growing, definitely separate. My phone buzzed with a message from Quinn. "How was seeing Clay tonight?" I replied. "It was fine. Actually, it was good. I think we're both going to be okay, just not together." She sent back a heart emoji and proud of you. I was proud of me too. Proud that I'd recognized abuse and left. Proud that I'd established boundaries and maintained them. Proud that I'd built a life I genuinely loved. The person I'd been when I lived with Clay felt like a stranger now, anxious, diminished, constantly apologizing. This version of me was stronger, clearer, more authentically myself. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility. Maybe someday I'd be ready for another relationship, with someone who respected me from the start. Or maybe I'd stay happily single, building my photography career and surrounding myself with genuine friendships. Either way, I was ready. Ready for whatever came next. Confident that I could handle it, knowing I'd never again sacrifice my peace for someone else's comfort. And that knowledge felt like freedom.